So we continue with our video and our revision for today. And yesterday we started with paper 1 of an original mock, and we did review 10 questions with regards to literary theory or literary notion, like we did explain on the board here. So today we are going to pick up from question 11 right down to question 20, and because of it we are going to look at those very important items or issues that we should note with respect to the text related text. So we go straight into it. Now question 11 reads thus: William Shakespeare, of course, Coriolanus. Now remember, before we get into it, Coriolanus is one of those military plays written by William Shakespeare, and of course a tragedy, because Shakespeare kept the traditions of the genre tragedy going in Coriolanus, and it's a beautiful and extremely very thrilling play with so much suspense. So let us. Now it says the original name of Coriolanus is A. Gaius Menenius, B. Lucius, C. Caius Marcius, and D. Brutus. You see, the original name of Coriolanus is Caius Marcius. Now, when the play opens up, we don't see any Coriolanus. We encounter a certain Caius Marcius, a formidable Roman military general, fearless, and breathes fear in the hearts and minds of his enemies. Now when the play opens up, we will observe that the Romans and the Volscians are at war. Now the Romans were able to beat the Volscians and take over the territory or the city of Corioli. And we observe that this general called Caius Marcius played an extremely very important role. In fact, he almost single-handedly masterminded the victory of the Romans. And so once the battle is over, the Romans will honor him by giving him the name Coriolanus. So Coriolanus comes from the victory of the Romans against the Volscians over Corioli. So Coriolanus means victory at Corioli. It therefore means that it is an honor given to him for his military genius. Oh yes, his military genius. Now let us go back to the play. Remember that what made him so outstanding in the entire confrontation or in the entire campaign is when the Roman soldiers were retreating. But then Caius Marcius bravely and single-handedly charged. He was a cavalry. He charged. Now a cavalry means soldiers who ride on horses. Remember, we have foot soldiers, we have archers, those who shoot bow and arrows, and then we have the cavalry, those who ride on horses. So he charged the city of Corioli without his men. Then sat back and soldiers closed up the gates, and they knew that Caius, their general, would be killed because he was outnumbered. But then they were surprised when he triumphantly opened up the gate and then came back, and all they could see in him was blood streaming. Of course, he was bleeding, but then he had beaten and killed quite a huge number of them. Break open the gate, and then he rode back to his men, mobilized them, and then they charged back into Corioli. The total effect was a resounding victory for the Romans. And so Cominius, a general who fought alongside Coriolanus, would not stop singing his praises. And as soon as they entered the hall, Cominius would sing his praises. The senators, brave Coriolanus, fought at Corioli. Reasons why they named Coriolanus, which means victory at Corioli. So the right answer there is Caius, which. Now we go down to question 12. It says, who makes a speech supporting Coriolanus before the Roman Senate? Of course, that's when Cominius recounted his brave and his heroics at the battle against the Volscians. Oh yes, he recounted everything because he was the one Coriolanus had told him, some men your and I into. And Cominius says, I wish I could send my men to attend to your wounds. But if you bravely demand the permission there and charge up against the Volscians, by permission, you have my word. Coriolanus turned around and told the men, how many of you here are willing to fight? How many of you here would rather die bravely than run home like cowards? And the men who cast over, they will throw up their heart, throw up their swords, and they were all mobilized, and everyone eager to go with Coriolanus. And that was the military this fellow. So when he comes back, it's only normal for him to give it the title Coriolanus, which means victory at Corioli. So the right answer there to question 12 is C, Cominius. Now we go to 13. What consular tradition does Coriolanus ask to be exempted from? Now when we talk about consular traditions of Rome, it is very important that we look at the entire build-up of the Roman Republic. Now take note that the Romans still carry in mind memories of their last dictator, Tarquin. Tarquin had brutally killed quite a huge number of them. So the Romans rose up and they expelled him. Ever since Tarquin was expelled from Rome, the Romans decided to transform their territory from a kingdom to a republic. Now the Romans will only accept consuls. Now to become a consul, you would need, of course, the support of the people, and the people there are the masses, and the masses there are the plebeians. Bear in mind that Rome has two tribes. Socially, the society has been structured into two parts. The first, we have the upper class, which of course are the patricians. They constitute the aristocracy. Those are held power. And down there in the echelons of the social ladder, we then have the plebeians. Of course, they were the common people. They make up the workmen, the farmers, the carpenters, the bricklayers, the soldiers, that. So it's very important that we look at the societal composition or societal stratification of the Roman society and how all of this played into the play Coriolanus. It's very important. So the question says that what was the consular tradition? Of course, Coriolanus is the overwhelming favorite to become the new consul of Rome, thanks to his heroics at the battle of Corioli. But then there is a problem. Oh yes, according to the consular traditions of the Roman Republic, whoever has been designated by the Senate to be consul win the support of the masses, of course, the plebeians. And for all we know, Coriolanus is a very rude guy. Oh yes, he's very rude, and he doesn't want to see these plebeians around him. And so that's a problem, because we know that Coriolanus is a tragic hero, and by virtue of his tragic nature, there must be a tragic flaw, what we call a character weakness. And that character weakness is what will cause the tragic hero to fall from grace to grace, hence making him a tragic hero, and they play a tragedy. So Coriolanus' tragic flaw is good and right. That is what will cause his downfall, when he spoke so harshly against the Volscians in their own territory. Avidius couldn't bear it. I mean, Coriolanus looks at these fellows in the eyes and tell them that I rendered their wives widows. Oh yes, I rendered them fatherless right in front of Avidius and his men, and they couldn't take it. So they pulled out their lances on their daggers and they stabbed him. And so that is how he died in Corioli. But let's come back to Rome. Now he has just returned. He has marched into Rome victoriously or triumphantly. And of course, he has been designated as a consul. But then he will need the support of the people, which means humbling yourself and talking to the people. And it is not in Coriolanus' DNA to be humble. He's a military man, and he will keep to that. Oh yes. So he goes over there and he tells the senators, please, can we just keep this part of our tradition and just let me be the consul without talking to the people? He pleaded, and they said, no, you must appeal to the people. And when Coriolanus goes there, we know what happens. Brutus Junius and Cicilus Venetus are all there, and as soon as they see him, they tease him just a little, and poof, he goes off again. Oh yes, he goes off insulting the plebeians, and instead of winning them, he instead pushed them away from him, and they turn against him. of course, leading to his exile out of Rome. So the right answer there is B, asking the people's permission. So we then go to 14. 14 says, which of these characters is not a Roman? Now, there are two characters in that text who work on the two different camps. The Romans have Nicanor. Nicanor is a Roman spy who spies on the Volscians and then relate news back to the Romans. While on the other side, the Volscians have Adrian. Now, Adrian spies on the Romans and relate information back to the Volscians. And so those friends, we encounter them in the breadth of the play. We encounter them as soon as Coriolanus was exiled, banished out of Rome. As soon as he begins to make his way to the kingdom of the Volscians, he encountered these two men, and it was they who told him that the new capital of the Volscian is no longer Coroli but Antium. Remember, Coroli has been taken over by the Romans, and so the Volscians have to move capital. So they now another city for their capital, and that city was Antium. It was in that episode that we encountered Adrian and Nicanor, who were discussing and telling each other what is happening on the two different camps. So if the question says that which of these characters is not a Roman, of course it is B, Adrian. Adrian is a Volscian who spies on the Romans and relates information back to the Volscians. Remember that in war, information is when we are talking about information, we call it intelligence. The more intelligence you can gather about your enemy, the more empowered you are, because you can know their weaknesses and know how to direct your and quickly take down your enemies. So of course they are spies. Let me phrase like that. As each one spying for in the opposite camp for their respective for their own respective people. So the right answer there is B. Now we go down to question 15. Now we are done with the William Shakespeare's Coriolanus. Now we go down to Wole Soyinka's A Dance in the Forest. Now question 15 says, in what year did Nigeria become independent? Now I want to believe that question will be easier for all my lecture students, given that most of you are history students. We all know that Nigeria got independence in 1960. Now remember that Nigeria was the seat of the British, it was the capital of British imperialism in Africa. It was the seat of the British Empire in the entire Africa. It was from Nigeria that the British ruled their various territories in Africa. And we also remember that Lord Frederick Lugard, the then Governor General of Northern Nigeria, was also based in Nigeria. And we also know that our own Southern Cameroons was governed as part and parcel of the eastern region of Nigeria. We were only able to break out of that union following the eastern regional crisis between Nnamdi Azikiwe and Iyo Ita back there in Nigeria. And so Endeli would pull his men together and tell them that we are Southern Cameroonians. What are we doing here? And it was there that they decided to congregate in the conference that culminated to the formation of the first political party in Southern Cameroons, which of course was the KNC, and it was followed by the KPP, the KNC of Emmanuel Ifaka Endeli, of course, which campaigned for the unification with Southern Cameroons. And then there was Negus Namasombile, who formed the KPP, the Cameroons People's Party, with its manifesto to continue with their integration with Nigeria. But then 2 years later, 1955, Endeli would change his mind. Well, we hear that that's because he got married to a Nigerian woman. He would change his mind and change the manifesto of the party to favor continuous integration of Nigeria, and that would push backbenchers like Django Foncha and Augustine Gomdra to break ranks and form their own party. That's when the KNDP resurfaced 2 years later. That was 1955. But let's leave all of that for another day, since we are here in literature. So we are saying that in what year? Nigeria got independence in 1960. The first British territory to gain independence was the Gold Coast, present-day Ghana, and that independence came in 1957. Nigeria followed 3 years later. So let's go down to question 16. When did Soyinka win the Nobel Prize in Literature? Now I want to advise that every advanced level student going in for advanced level literature, I would really plead that you take note of this question, because Wole Soyinka is one of our greatest writers. He's one of the greatest the African continent has ever produced. We celebrate him every day, and we are proud that he has put Africa in the map of literary giants the world over. So he won this prize in 1986. He's the only African who has been able to get this prize. So it's only normal that we take note of it. Oh yes, it is. So let us go to 17. Why was this play controversial? Why was it? By the way, what is the meaning of the word controversial? Controversial means something that is debatable, something that causes disagreement, that is polarized, something that pushes people to come up and they come up with varying opinions. We say something like that is controversial. So when we come back, Volscian, A Dance of the Forest, was a controversial play because the play was built around the independence of Nigeria. Reasons why it was staged on Independence Day. And it calls it the gathering of the tribe, which metaphorically means the independence of Nigeria. It's an independence for all Nigerians. But then a lot went wrong. Oh yes, a lot went wrong. That is why in the play, both the living and the dead, including the gods, have been summoned to gather at the center of the forest. And the author calls it the gathering of the tribes. Oh yes, it is time for stock taking. So take note of that. Now we go down to number 18. What is the first image of the play? We don't even need to go through the options here. We know the first image. When our play begins, we encounter a dead man and a dead woman. Oh yes, they are moving like zombies. You know, like the zombie movies we used to watch in primary school. They are moving like zombies. They are just broke open from their ceremonies, their graves, and they are making their way to the gathering of the tribes. And who do they encounter? They encounter are four gentlemen and lady. We are talking about Adenebi, Obaneji, Demoke, and Rolla. They all are making their way to the gathering. And so they encounter this dead man and this dead woman. And who are they? They too have been summoned by the gods to partake in the gathering of the tribes. We are later on going to find out that the dead man used to be a warrior who served at the palace or the court of Mata Karibu, and his wife, Madame Tortoise, who has now reincarnated as Rolla the prostitute. Oh yes, touch on that another time. So the right answer, D, the dead man and the dead woman coming up out of the soil. 19, question 19. Lauren Vivian Hansberry. Oh yes, Lauren Vivian Hansberry. She's a woman of her own. Oh yes, that play is superb, excellently written, and it recounts the experiences. It recounts the racial prejudice. It recounts segregation. It recounts poverty. It recounts dreams that were unfulfilled that our very own Black American brothers and sisters experienced in the 50s leading to the 60s. That was when the civil rights movement was staged by, of course, Reverend Martin. Oh yes, it's a sad part of the African American history we must always keep in our mind. Oh yes. So when we are talking about Hansberry, we are talking about a Raisin in the Sun, a title she got from one of the poems written by Langston Hughes. Oh yes, a Raisin in the Sun. Now when this woman wrote this play, the play was staged in Broadway in New York. Oh yes, it was staged in Broadway, New York in 1959, and she won an award, a recognition for this play. So we come down here, they say, when did A Raisin in the Sun open on Broadway? Of course, that was in 1959. That's B. And then 20, they say, which of the following is not a drama by Lauren Hansberry? You see, that question is what I earlier said. I said that before you get into the hall to take advanced level paper 1, please bother much to read up the biography of all or every one of our writers, all 10 of them. Read out biographical information about these authors. Look at their other works. Try to memorize and keep them in mind. Questions like this always pop up. It may not be Lauren Hansberry, the GC. It might be Chinua Achebe, who wrote Antis of the Savannah. It might be Shrika, who wrote A Dance of the Forest. It might be Shakespeare, who wrote Venus. It might be another author. It's the same question. This question, I don't expect a teacher to come to class and teach you how many plays an author has written. Come on. Go out there and look up, do some research. You can look up biographical data of any of the plays there. You will find something. Just put a grip over it. Don't go complain that my teacher didn't teach me that. Oh no, come on, we can't teach you everything. Some of these things are so basic that you can do them for yourself. What is there to understand about titles of a play written by an author? Just go look them up, memorize them and put in your mind. It's that simple. Oh yes, but for the sake of our vision, I'll reveal that. Of course, she wrote the sign in Sidney Bronstein's window. She wrote Le Negre, she wrote Le Blanc. So the right answer there is a drinking god. The drinking god. It is not a play written by Lorraine Hansberry. Take note of that. So it is Z. So we have now successfully gone through the next 10 questions from question 11 to question 20. You realize that we're quite fast going through that, faster than the first 10 questions, which of course was on literary notion. That tells us that the more you master the 10 texts under study, the easier paper 1 will be for you. You can quickly run through it within 30 minutes and you're done with it. It's just all about having a mastery of these stories. There are just 10 of them. You can quickly put a handle on them. All you need to do is know their storylines. Once you know their storyline and the author's biography, this thing will be a child's play for you. Oh yes. So if this video has been useful to you, which I know it is, I would really plead that you smash the like button, the share, and most importantly, the subscribe button. Smash it, please. Do smash it, please. So we have gone through the 10 texts. Now I must put a cap on a class here and go to class. But once I return back from school in the evening, I will continue from question 21 right down to question 30. So I will see you here.